We're back. New York City Baseball, past, present, and future. Comfortably Zone Radio Network made an executive decision to keep the show together and not divide the two. We're going to divide up the microphone a little bit on a weekly basis. We have Alan Blumkin from New York City, Marty Rose from Florida, and me, Ralph Tyko. I'm from Alameda, California. We're all originally New Yorkers. We're fanatical history buffs about baseball. We follow both teams to this day. We have an eye on the future, not just the past. And we're going to combine for a terrific show as we've been doing all this time. Wayne has started his own show on this network, Wayne Unger. It's called Weighted Donut, or Weighted Donuts, which is kind of an esoteric euphemism for his hero, Ellie Howard, invented what is known as weighted donuts. The slides onto a bat, and players swing it on the on-deck circle and slide it off, and now when you get up at bat, you swing in a lighter bat. And Ellie Howard, Wayne's boyhood hero, did that, and he named his show after it. It's basically a baseball show, but it expands to other things. And the Comfortably Zone Network is expanding. We have like 7, 8, 9 podcasts going out on a weekly basis, and most of them are baseball. And we cover the gamut. So I'm happy to be doing this with my boyhood friend Mert and one of my newest friends, Alan. Let's get right into it. I don't want to talk about the Mets first. This hasn't been a good week for the Mets, God knows. Let's talk about the Yankees. The Yankees have shown some signs of life. Alan Blumkin.
Yeah, well, I watched the last couple of games with the White Sox, and they played fairly well, but it looks to me like Geroy is going to want to use the starters for 6 innings and then bring in the big 3 relievers, and he can't do that every day.
Well, they do have 3 closers, three guys who have closed very successfully, and Chapman is unbelievable. Wouldn't it be something if they could not trade one of them away and be a little creative and do something like that? Plus, their starting pitching has looked better in the past few weeks, actually.
I don't think that with this that the Yankees are going to have a complete game the entire season.
Okay.
And some of their starters, like Severino, was terrible. He was 0-6 with an ERA of over 7. And they're starting a raw pitcher tonight named Chad Green. He's never made a major league appearance before, and they're starting him tonight against the Diamondbacks in Phoenix. That game doesn't start till 9:40 Eastern time.
Right. Well, let's hope for the best on that. You know, seasons are made with guys coming up and surprising and taking that big step. You know anything about him, Alan?
No, not at all. He was
okay.
2-3 in Scranton. But I'm sure that if Sabathia is ready to come off the disabled list, this guy will be dispatched right back to Scranton. The Yankees, the last few years, have done an awful lot of that. They've bring these guys up for a day or two, and then and the way the option the clause works is, if somebody's an option, you can bring them up and send them down as often as you can for a couple of years, and then they have to make a decision, I think, after 3 years whether they want to keep the guy around or not.
Right. And then he said if they want to keep him on the 40-man roster, and then he's subject to the draft, the 5-year draft, Rule 5 draft.
Right. And like George Steinbrenner used to have a show going to Columbus when he owned the team. Now the Yankees.
Bye-bye Balboni.
Yeah. Now the Yankees are in Scranton, which is a hell of a lot closer, and for years was a Philadelphia Phillies farm team. It's very, very easy to send these guys back and forth.
Right.
I think this Green is, if he does well tonight, he may stick around. If he doesn't, he'll be back in Scranton within the next couple of days. So
yeah, well, that's how it is in the podcast world, too. I could be back in Sacramento tomorrow.
Yeah.
Mert, let's talk Mets a little bit.
Oh, boy.
Yeah,
well,
bad week.
It was a terrible road trip. They didn't score more than 4 runs in any of the last 7 or 8 games. And, I don't know if it's partially the long road trip with no days off. That hurts. See if they get rejuvenated tomorrow night, because they've got 6 out of the next 9 games against the Nationals. So, with I think the Braves in between. So they need to show some signs of life. Granderson's been terrible. Duda, I'm getting a little tired of watching Duda, to tell you the truth.
Very streaky. Unbelievably streaky.
Yeah, but his cold streaks far outnumber his hot streaks,
True.
And, the catching situation, I think the Pilecki's doing pretty well. I like what I see. I like the way he handles the staff. I think he's hitting a little better than he did. When you play every day, can do a little bit better. Conforto's slacked off the last couple of weeks. Cespedes is still doing well. The middle infield is still looking good. David Wright, I don't know about David Wright. He can't throw. And although his on base is good because he's been walking a lot, but he hasn't been hitting much. And
well, it's not so much his arm; it's his back. He's got to throw from a weird position.
Yeah, he throws like submarine, basically.
Right. And he broke off a good throw the other day, and Howie and Josh made a big thing of it because you do it once, you could do it. And it was just right, and he made a great defensive play deep in the hole or deep towards third base, and threw a guy out and really showed something on the throw. So I suspect that once he gets used to the position, he'll be stronger. But his hitting hasn't been much. He hasn't had much punch. And there isn't really much in the pipeline at third base.
No.
I don't like to say this could be the beginning of the end for him, but it really could be.
It could very well be, yeah. But,
yeah.
I mean, look, as far as they got him under contract for how many more years? Several. I'm not sure exactly. Yeah, so he'll, if they're going to pay him that much.
Well, they're still paying Bobby Bonilla. The contracts don't bother me so much. Literally, they are. But then again, the Giants are still paying Rennie Stennett for some unknown reason, I'll bet. Let me get to the meat of the show a little bit, because in a way, both teams are not, it's a bad week. I don't want to dwell on it. I just want to say that I'm worried about Harvey to the point where he really hasn't had a good outing.
No, and he's not complaining about anything bothering him. He says he's fine. So, what does that mean? He's lost it already?
And what is anything bothering him? It doesn't mean, although he's not complaining about it, he's had a rough go in the press, so that maybe his not talking means nothing as well. But I think Collins expressed concern the other day. He said, I can't help but worry. No question about it.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Velocity's down. Velocity's down for DeGrom also, but DeGrom's he's got guts. He hangs in there, you know.
Right.
Like he did.
He's a winner. He will find a way to end an inning, get that ground ball in the second. And speaking of that ground ball, got to be impressed with Asdrubal. This guy is a shortstop.
Yeah, I what was he on Tampa Bay before? So, you really get to see him very much. And if you did get to see Tampa Bay, you weren't paying a lot of attention to the guy. So who knew? All you heard was that some people thought he was washed up as a shortstop. But from what I'm seeing, boy, he's better than we've had there in a while.
In a long time. If you include consistency, I know Reyes and those guys had much more range, it seems. But this guy is well positioned, and the game is changing in that way. The positioning, the experimentation of, basically going with the numbers and the percentages. You're moving a third baseman to the right part of the infield sometime. You're moving the shortstop over.
Out of hand.
The shifting has taken a quantum leap since 2013. I read a piece in 2014 by Jason Stark, and he was doing percentages of shifts, and since this started for real back in 2013, every year it's taken a quantum leap. Now, before, in the old days, the only one that used to hear them doing against this was Ted Williams.
That's right, the Williams shift, and he refused to give in.
Yeah,
I don't think was there a time that he did give in? Were there games when Williams took that to his advantage?
Possibly, but not very, very often. He was paid to hit with power. And like Ralph Tyko once said, home run hitters drive Cadillacs.
True. But he wasn't just a home run hitter. He hit 340 something.
Hit 344 lifetime, and he very, very rarely struck out.
Right. Speaking of rarely striking out, you got to mention DiMaggio. DiMaggio has more home runs in his career than he does strikeouts.
Yeah, well, back in when they played, he's striking out 100 times is a rarity. And
right, but even a rarity, that would be if he struck. No. Even for back in those days, to have that percentage of home runs to strikeouts was damn good. You're right. Today, but then again, there are numbers to prove it. If you're going to make an out, what the hell? A strikeout's an out's an out. That kind of thing.
There are outs and there are outs. And one of the things that drives me crazy nowadays is when you get a runner on second base and nobody out, and the next batter hits a ground ball to short and doesn't advance the runner.
Right. Exactly.
And
it's the little things. But then again, the batter, because of the nature of the game, where players are paid on statistics. I mean, there's no one that goes to arbitration with the statistic of getting the runner over.
No.
And you find yourself, if you're in management, you find yourself going up against a player purely on statistics to keep his salary down, and you kill his career and you kill his value to the team because, he loses in arbitration, and the next year the kid's going to come in and say, well, there's a runner on second base and there's nobody out, but they're not paying me to get the guy over, and that's a big part of what's wrong with the game.
Well, another thing that's come up recently on Facebook is the save number and the hold number, both of which some people feel are agent statistics. And
right.
A couple of weeks ago, I ran across the name of Wes Littleton. Wes Littleton was a pitcher who got one of his 3 career saves in the game in 2007 where Texas beat Baltimore 30-3 because he pitched the last 3 innings of that game in Texas. And under the rules, if you pitch the last 3 innings, the score is something like that, you get credit for a save.
Right. Now, that's certainly not fair. I did an interview last night with my co-host on the Pete Golenbach show, Peter Golenbach. And Peter is a Tampa Bay fan, and he just came back from a game in which his manager, he's really down on the Tampa Bay manager right now. He's a Tampa Bay fan, really down. And we didn't have that much time to get into it, but his manager, in yesterday's game, used the closer in the 7th inning. And
to get out of the
guy
jam?
Blowing the game in the 9th. So when is the time to use your closer? That's very, very objective because the game could be won and lost in the 6th inning. It could be won and lost in the 5th inning. When do you quell that rally? And the way it's set up where everybody knows his
Pirates in the National League. And Marty, I told a number of Mets fans I know that they were going to love Neil Walker.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Trade that I was very, very opposed to from the Pirates standpoint. But anyway, Mark Melanson, their closer, came into a game last Sunday against the Cardinals that the Pirates won 10-5. He threw 2 pitches and got a double play on the second pitch. And got a save because he faced the tying run tying run was at the plate, and somebody complained about this, and they had Ryan Vogelsong in there in the 9th inning as a mop-up, and I can't stand Vogelsong, but that's a whole other story. And the guy loaded the bases with 1 out. What are they supposed to do? Leave this guy in to blow the game, which from my knowledge of him, he was perfectly capable of doing. So they brought in Melanson, he threw 2 pitches, got a double play in the second ball, and the game was over, and he got credit for a save. The one stat that's insane is the hold, because you can come in with a 10-run lead, give up 9 runs, and then you win by 1, and then the pitcher gives up 9 runs, gets credit for a hold.
Right. My most or what I think is the most significant pitching stat is simply whips, which is hits and walks combined per 9 innings.
Yeah.
And naturally, the lowest, a good whip would be like 1.2, 1.25, 1.3. Anything below 0.0 is an inordinately great whip. And you can tell a pitcher's effectiveness. I don't think the win thing is very, very important. I mean, it's nice to get a win, but that's game circumstances. I think a pitcher should be judged on basically how many runners get on, how many runners score, and my other favorite stat, which is OBS, 4 pitchers and 4 batters. How a batter, OBS is a combined slugging and on-base percentage, and it really gives an indication of how effective a batter is. Batter can hit 340 and have a very low OPS, and a batter can hit 280 and have a high OPS. So, and against pitchers, you don't see the stat very often, and it's tough to bring up on the computer, but pitchers' record in reverse, what batters hit against them, OPS, is very important.
Oh, I was watching the Pirate Cub game on MLB on Friday afternoon, and the Pirate pitcher, Francisco Liriano, was behind on every batter. And besides walking a bunch, he was behind all the time. And when you get behind 3-1, 3-2, you've got to come in with a meatball.
Right.
They had a home run off of him. Cubs had a 3-run home run off him in the third inning, make it 3-0. And his friend of mine calls me up and said, "I told him the game is over." He said, "You're such a pessimist, blah, blah, blah." I said, "The guy is nothing. He's walking people. He's going at 3. So 2 innings later, somebody else hits a home run, makes it 5, and then the next inning, another one hits a 3-run home run, makes it 8. So when a pitcher can't get the ball over and is falling behind the counts all the time, he's going to get clobbered. If they're playing a team that can hit the way the Cubs do most of the time.
Right. I want to say one other thing about Ryan Vogelsong, and not just him in particular. I'm a giant apologist in the National League West especially. And Vogelsong, I know, went back and forth between the Pirates and the Giants. Didn't give the Pirates as many good years as he did the Giants. He was very effective, and they've won 3 times in the past 6 years. He was a big part of that. So sometimes people have different memories of a pitcher and their careers and how good they were or bad they were. Vogelsberg did all right with the Giants, and not so much with the Pirates, Alan?
Yeah, well, the Pirate management seems to think that the middle relief is interchangeable. So they had a couple of guys like Bastato, who is now on the Mets and doing a very good job for them, that did very well for the Pirates last year, and they didn't offer him anything because they thought he was irreplaceable. And they bring up these guys or get hold of these guys who are a lot cheaper, and they.
Yeah, well, bullpen is a crapshoot. Bullpen's a crapshoot from year to year. Mert, close it out on the Mets, and then we're going to talk. I have Alan. I'm curious about the life of George Weiss, the baseball life of George Weiss. Not much is written about him, and Alan is a maven on that subject, and he's going to help us learn about George Weiss. Okay. Anything about the Mets that you want to talk about, Mert?
Yeah, I think we pretty much covered it. I'm just hoping that their malaise on the West Coast was just that long road trip and 17 consecutive days of playing. I think they're going to come out rejuvenated tomorrow night, and I'm sure that the crowd will be into it. That these games, even though they're midweek, and I know the weather hasn't been good in the Northeast, but people are going to come out for the Washington series, no question. And
no, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm looking for them. That first game is Thor against Scherzer. So that's going to be
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Right, and I'm a big believer in the first game sets the tone of a series, and so good. Here's to it. Let's have a good week, and let's have anything on the Yankees this week that's coming up that you want us to look for. You think we should be thinking about, Alan?
Yeah, they're out in Arizona and Oakland, so their games are going to be, very on your time out there in California.
Right.
I know Arizona doesn't go to daylight, so they're on,
2 hours.
Daylight is now.
But,
I'm going to one of those games. I think it's Thursday night with Rob Medeiros.
One of the things I wanted to mention is that Marty and I could probably do, and you too probably could do, a whole dissertation on the insanity of the scheduling the way it works now.
It's terrible. Yeah, the Yankees playing with...
the Red Sox were rained out in Kansas City tonight, and it's a one-trip in, so they either have to play a day-night tomorrow if the rain leaves, and or make this up on a mutual date somewhere later in the season. And because you have if you play outside of the division, between the other divisions in the interleague, it's always a one trip in, one trip out. So these games like that get postponed are generally very, very hard to make up.
Yeah. Plus you have the Yankees flying out with no day off, going out west, and losing their designated hitter. So, I would say, without knowing who the starting pitching is, I'd say Arizona's a lock tonight. Just by the schedule and the no DH. So.
Yankees are starting a first-time rookie tonight.
That's true too.
Never thrown a major league.
That doesn't help either.
We'll just have to see.
And Arizona's a lot like Colorado in a lot of ways. It's a place like a hitter's ballpark for sure.
Yeah, and those are two teams that, as far as I'm concerned, the two teams in the National League that so far under the radar. I can't even name more than 5 to 10 players on either of them.
Yeah. Well, you gave your bugaboo, Alan, is the schedule. My bugaboo is being a Met fan for 50 years. No, that's not right. There have been some great year in there.
Well, I used to hate the Mets when the Pirates were playing them 18 times a year in the old NL East, but now the only time they play each other 6 times in the first 2 weeks in June, and that's it.
Right.
As far as
the unbalanced schedule is
win
crazy.
Every single game outside of those 6 games in June.
Yeah.
It would help because among those would be games with the Cubs and the Cardinals. So outside of those 6 games, there's no conflict at all anymore.
Yeah.
I used to go to every. In the old days, in the 70s, I used to go to every Met Pirate game in Shea Stadium.
We went to the first one, right, Ralph?
Right, Joe Christopher. Right, I think I might have told Alan. And
our friend.
And I know we've mentioned this on these airs before, but
yes, we have.
You and I and how many other Jackson
17 of us. There was 17 of us. We took up a whole row in the upper deck.
In right field, we all play hooky to go from Newtown High School to go to opening day at Shea Stadium in 1964. So, and I've told this story before. Your dad, Mert, as you well remember, worked swing shift, so he was home during the day, and he'd be out and about in the neighborhood. And my mom worked as a homekeeper and was home during the day, out and about in the neighborhood. And they happened to, as often do, out shopping, they run into each other. And remember, I'm playing hooky, and my grades were so bad that I couldn't afford to play hooky. It was no way. I was in constant conflict with school. That was from point A to point B. So, your dad, Jack, runs into Jack. I ran into Jack today, my mother says. When I get home, I said, oh. She says, Jack said the kids have a nice day for a ball game. So, how was your day? Oh, it was great. How was school? Fine. Kids said, and then she gets into telling me this story. She wails off and gives me a left hook out of nowhere that I had to take a standing 8 count. on that one. She was so mad that I played hooky. But all of us, to commemorate, and it doesn't matter. Years later, I still feel the pain a little bit, but the joy of seeing the Mets play the first game ever, and it was against those Pirates. I'll bet you were at that game, Alan.
I was at the second one.
Oh, okay. Well,
Bob Brent pitched and Willie Stargell hit the first
story
home run.
you just recited reminded me of a time that some reporter asked Yogi Berra, how you like school? And he said, closed.
Very good. I like that.
That is very good.
That's one of the great Yogiisms. Doesn't get too much play.
No, I don't think I ever heard that one. That's a very good one.
I don't think that one was in the book either.
Yeah, my cousin David used to say, "It's not school I despise so much; it's the principle of the thing." Old jokes. Give us a little George Weiss, because he's one of those people that, again, I know very little about. I know about his success, and believe it or not, I credit George Weiss with a lot of success of how the Mets built the team to get to 69. I mean, they started off horrendously, of course, and we can get into that, but George Weiss laid the foundation in a lot of ways, hired Whitey Herzog, who was absolutely key. And but I want to hear about George Weiss and the old Yankee years. And I'm going to shut up for a minute and let Alan Blumkin take it.
Okay, first of all, I want to mention that married couple in Sable who are friends of mine on Facebook, Bert and Benita Boxemer, are coming out with a biography of George Weiss in the middle of July. And it's the first full biography that's ever going to be published on him. And because I went into the Amazon site on Facebook to see if there were any others before that, and there weren't any. And so I did some research on his early years in baseball. He was born in 1894, broke in as a general manager on a semi-pro team in New Haven. He was from Connecticut. And then after a couple of years with them, he had a part ownership in the New Haven team in the Eastern League, which was a Class A league at that point. And at that time, in 1925, Casey Stengel became the president, general manager, and manager of the Worcester team in that league from Worcester, Mass.
Right near Holyoke.
A lot of contact, and they became friends. Stengel had a unique way of getting out of that job. As general manager, he fired himself as manager, and then as president, he fired himself as general manager, and then he resigned as president. And Weiss went to the International League for a very short stay as running the Baltimore Orioles in the late 20s. And Jacob Rupert and Ed Barrow, who was very much like Weiss in personality, hired Weiss to run the Yankee farm system in 1932. And Weiss ran the Yankee farm system through 1947 and put together the tremendous farm system, which was comparable with the Rickey farm systems, to bring players up to the Yankees, because the last minor league player that the Yankees actually bought was Joe DiMaggio.
Didn't know that.
So Weiss produced the Newark Bears team in the 30s, I think it was 1937 and 1938, where every one of the 25 made a major league roster. And he was always looking to the future and signing guys, much like Ricky, signing guys and trying to trade guys that were a little bit over the hill. When Larry McPhail was forced out as part of the Yankee ownership after the 1947 World Series, Dan Topping and Del Webb promoted Weiss as the general manager of the Yankees. So his first season was 1948 as general manager, and the first deal he made was with the Chicago White Sox when they picked up Eddie Lopat.
That wasn't a bad deal.
He
went quite well for those 5 consecutive World Championships.
Yeah, and they gave up a pitcher named Bill White, W-I-G-H-T, who wound up pitching for 7 American League teams. And Aaron Robinson, who was a catcher, who the Tigers then the White Sox then sent to the Tigers for Billy Pierce even up. And he started bringing in National Leaguers every August to help the Yankees propel pennant. He got rid of Bucky Harris as manager after 1948 and brought in Casey Stengel, who had just won the pennant in the Pacific Coast League with the Oakland Oaks.
Now, that was a gutsy move because Stengel had already failed twice. He was thought of as kind of a clown. What was it, do you think, that Weiss saw in Stengel that others didn't?
That Stengel, beneath all the humor and everything, was a terrific manager who would not use players out of sentiment and would not criticize Weiss in any manner.
Okay. Sometimes that's the best qualification for a manager in a general manager's eyes. Appreciate that.
The Yankees in 1949, which was Stengel's first year, had a tremendous number of injuries, and they wound up beating the Red Sox in the last 2 games of the season and beat the Dodgers in the World Series. And that's
DiMaggio's skill injury, I remember, was...
Weiss had built up a farm system to such a point that the Yankees could trade their excess off to the St. Louis Browns or the Washington Senators or the Philadelphia A's for players that they might need.
Right, or future consideration, or cash money, or...
Yeah, the same way the Dodgers used the Cubs, basically, in the National League. Yeah,
didn't think about that in the same terms, but you're right. A lot of guys, Andy Pafko, for instance.
Well, Dodgers had a minor league infielder named Bobby Morgan who used to hit .330 in the International League, and Ricky was always very, very good at getting teams to overpay for guys like this. Bobby, I found out they sent Morgan to the Cubs, and guess what? He couldn't hit major league pitching. And Weiss was pretty much the same way. The only real mistake I thought he made as a general manager, of course, the Rashi thing, as I mentioned on our last talk, turned out to be okay because Rashi proved to be over the hill. But when he made the trade in 1954 after that season, because Reynolds had retired, Lopat was on the way down, Rashi was gone, and they made the trade for Bob Turley and Don Larson. Larson,
right? Oh yes,
off the season
so solidified now.
3-21, and the Yankees had an outfielder they had gotten from Washington 2 years before named Irv Noren, who
Kubek's father-in-law.
Yeah, the Yankees had traded Jackie Jensen for. And Noren had a career year in 1954. Well, Gene Woodling had the worst year of his career that season. So instead of packaging Noren, they packaged Woodling, and Woodling later went on to have some very good seasons with the Orioles and the Indians, and Noren, after that season, slid back into his 260 hitting and was out of the majors by 1957. But outside of that, he was always able to get trades, and of course, when trades made, and when the Yankees basically ran the Kansas City A's from 1955 to 1960, he was able to trade the Yankees' excess for useful players that the Kansas City A's had. But the thing about Weiss,
it wasn't just excess. These guys that the Yankees were producing in said farm system were guys like Sherm Lawler, Triandos. They were supplying the league with
catchers,
really good ball players.
Yeah. Now, Hal Smith, who hit the home run in the World Series for the Pirates, was part of their system.
Exactly. Yeah. Speaking of catchers, and it's the big thing with Weiss, it's kind of a dichotomy. He didn't bring up a black player until Ellie Howard.
No,
it took a long time. This years after Jackie in the same city. Okay. And that took a long time. But yet, when he formed the Mets, it seemed like he was colorblind.
Well,
Charlie Neal
quoted in the early 50s as saying that as long as he ran the Yankees, they would never have a black player.
What made him the way he was? What forced him to change? If not forced him, why did he change his ideology so much by the time he got to the Mets? And
because it was with the tenor of the times, he was under great civic pressure. I mean, the Dodgers and the Giants, when they were here, were in the forefront of signing black players.
Right.
And when they got to the Mets, they realized that the National League expansion draft had very slim pickings, and that in order to attract people to the Polo Grounds, which had been around basically since 1891, that they would have to have primarily a bunch of old Dodgers on the team.
Right.
So he brought in Charlie Neal, and he brought in some others, and he changed with the times, not all that much. They didn't have a preponderance of black players, but they were so bad in those years that he was almost willing to take a chance on anybody.
Well, actually, they had Alvin Jackson, Joe Christopher,
and they had Charlie Neal, who was 3 years from his big year in 1959 with the Dodgers, who turned out to be terrible with the Mets.
There was talk that he had an alcohol problem towards the end. Must have been something, because Mert will tell you that we would look at each other, and we both know our looks when we look at each other, and something is either so good or so bad at a sporting thing that we don't have words, right, Mert?
Yeah, you know. Yeah.
Willie Knowles triple overtime against Wilt in his rookie year. And triple overtime. We were sitting watching that. We just looked at each other. Oh my God! But on the same token, we go to Met games and we'd see things that were so preposterously bad. And as you said, there were slim pickings. Alan, we didn't look at it that way. When the Mets were being born, we thought the National League was the better of the leagues, from top to bottom, except for the Yankees, of course, and that the National League teams, guys like Mantilla, who came over, were good ball players, just waiting for their time to play regularly.
Well,
Or guys like Gus Bell and Woodling and all these guys were so incredibly washed up at the same time.
The American League had a very different expansion than the National League. The American League allowed, I think, something like 15 to 20 protected players. And the Angels and the Senators were able to pick up people like Dean Chance and the catcher Bob Rogers and several other real prospects. The National League saw this, and they froze the roster at 25 before September, so the National League teams the Mets and the Houston could not pick from the top 40 prospects, so they're having to pick all these guys who the other teams are ready to release or trade or whatever. And when you have the first pick in an expansion draft, and it turns out to be Hobie Landreth, the selection is not going to be very, very good.
Right. Well, what did Casey say? He said, you got to have a catcher or there'll be a lot of pass balls.
They had 7 catchers in the first year, one of whom was the immortal Choo-Choo Coleman, who was so bad that he couldn't stick with the 1961 Phillies, who won 47 games. As a team everybody forgets about because of the 1962 Mets.
Yeah, one of those catchers was Sammy Taylor. I remember when they got him from the Cubs, and I thought to myself, here's a guy could hit a little bit. This guy might be decent. Nah. Cannizzaro was decent. Cannizzaro had was pretty good defensively and ended up catching the most games for them that year. Decent.
Hey, Ralph, speaking of Choo-Choo Coleman, remember what Choo-Choo Coleman told Ralph Kiner that his wife's name was?
I do. Go ahead, tell it.
Mrs. Coleman.
Mrs. Coleman. What does she call you, Choo-Choo? She calls me dear or something like that.
And he also asked her what she liked, and he said me.
Oh, yeah, right. That was it. Yeah, what does she like? She likes me. Kiner is great. I was reminded of a Kinerism on Facebook the other day when it was Mother's Day. Kiner said, to all of you mothers out there, it's Mother's Day in Shea Stadium, he says, to all of you mothers out there, happy birthday.
He did that on Father's Day once, too. So a bunch of us, his birthday was sometime in October, so a bunch of us got together and sent him a Father's Day card on his birthday. And I was at the baseball writers' dinner. We used to put a table together from work before it got too much out of hand price-wise. And they did a whole montage of Kinerisms. He was being honored there. And one of the famous ones, which I remember watching on TV, they were playing the Expos. And he said, the Expos have Tim Raines, who led the league in stolen bases the last couple of seasons, but this year he's being challenged by Vince Coleman of the St. Louis Browns, who at that point had been out of existence for 32 years. And he was to the Mets the way Phil Rizzuto was to the Yankees.
Yeah, right. And they didn't start out as caricatures. The difference between Rizzuto and Kiner really tried at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
And he just didn't have the knack for it. Rizzuto was a terrific announcer when he was with Red Barber and, just coming up and learning really good voice and was with it. He was great at the end, too, but it was almost a different, eighth inning, I'm over the bridge going home to
when the Mets would bring Kiner in occasionally in his last couple of years to do a game, and Kiner would do it on radio because he had Bell's palsy and his face was affected, they had him on the radio, and his points were very, very accurate.
Yeah, very bright guy.
Over the years, he did learn how to express himself somewhat in the King's English.
Right. Like we New Yorkers do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting back to Weiss, most of the players hated him because of his contract policies. He was another one that, sort of said about Mickey Mantle, he opened a vault to get you a nickel change. And he did, after Mickey Mantle, the most famous case was after Mickey Mantle won Triple Crown. Mantle got it raised to $75,000. And then Mantle in 1957 had a year where he had 365 with 34 home runs, 94 RBIs, and a lot of walks. And Weiss wanted to cut him his salary.
He didn't have the year he had the year before.
Because it was year to year, and if you didn't have the year before, do what you did the year before, they would cut you. This is when the reserve clause was in effect, and they had total, the management had total control over the players.
Right.
And
that's why I say
what people like Rickey and Weiss would have done in the free agency era with these crazy contracts that they have now with opt-out clauses.
Yeah.
But
hey, guys, this is terrific. We're coming up on the clock, and what we're going to do is, like I say, keep it together because it's a great dynamic. I'm learning from you guys constantly, and I'm loving it. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
Hey, Rob.
Okay. Mert, as usual, this is cool as beans. Cool
Very
beans.
good.
All right, everybody. We'll catch you next week. Keep your dreams wet and your humor dry. Adios.
Okay. Thank you.